In today's episode, we've got all the spooky stories you can handle. Whether you call them ghosts, energy, poltergeist, whatever, we've got a story for you. But first, I'm Stacy Grinsfelder.
And I'm Daniel Kanter.
You're listening to True Tales from Old Houses, the Haunted Episodes. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, Stacy. Good to see you.
Great to see you too. And hello to everyone out there who is listening. This is one of our favorite times of the year. Always fun here on the podcast.
Hello to those in physical form and not, I would say.
So we're doing something a little different this October. We've got an episode for you today. And then next week, we'll have part 2 rather than making you wait a week. So look at that. We got ourselves together.
Just nonstop ghost stuff.
We're also coming to you with these episodes commercial free, but we are doing something else special for the next 4 weeks. We are doing a merch run.
Merch, brand new merch.
Yay!
That's my merch cheer.
I like it. It's very clear.
Thank you. I've been practicing so much.
You've been practicing.
That's all I've been doing between our seasons.
Right before season 11 began, we had our graphic artist, Daniel's friend, Anna Dorfman, who designed the most beautiful new logo for us. And we are going to be putting that on merch. So we have zip front hoodies. Is that what they're called? It zips all the way. Instead of a pullover hoodie, it has a zip. We had some requests for that. And it will have an actual small embroidery on the left upper side. We're going to do embroideries this time.
Classy.
I know. Look at
So
us.
fancy.
A tote bag with black handles, and it also has an embroidered patch on it. And then, of course, we're doing T-shirts. We're doing a really beautiful, it's called Neptune Blue. It's kind of a deep, tealy, turquoisey blue color T-shirt with our logo on it. And then charcoal gray also. We are not a store. We do this a little bit differently during our March runs. Do you want to explain how that works, Daniel?
I would love to explain, Stacy.
Yes. Let's see if you remember.
In the way that I can try. Okay.
This is actually a test. This is a test. Go ahead.
And I failed. So the way that we run the merch, so it all gets printed locally to Stacy, which is great because we can support small businesses and offer you a better product than we can do with drop shipping. The caveat is that the order is a little different. So we're going to take orders. Then after the order period has closed, you will get your bill. We will submit the order to the vendor. And within about 2 weeks, we should have it in hand. And within about a week or two after that, you should have it in hand. So you will not get your order 5 seconds after you click order. That's because we like you too much to give you garbage.
And we are not your buddy, Jeff Bezos. We are True Tales from Old Houses. So yes, just the TLDR, it's a pre-order. The orders will be submitted after the merch run has completed, which is November 17th. So the day after that merch run closes, I will submit the orders to my local vendor. I'll get the orders back, send them out, and you will have them in time for holiday season. I know it's hard to think about that right now because it's spooky season, not holiday season. But we have got you covered for both of those things. So if you are interested in ordering merch, if you're interested in sporting a sweatshirt, a t-shirt, carrying around your tote bag like the proud person that you are, you can pre-order that merch at truetalesfromOldHouses.com/merch.
Beautiful.
I think we did it.
Beautifully done. I think we did it.
All right. Well, without further ado, all your spooky stories are coming up next. Our first story today comes from Rebekah. She and her husband noticed something unusual before they bought their bungalow in Tampa, and they bought it anyway.
Hi, my name is Rebekah Lazaridis, and I'm the artist behind the Instagram account at Home Illustrations. I create colorful hand-drawn home portraits with a focus on old houses.
Hi, Rebekah.
Welcome.
Hi, Stacy. Hi, Daniel. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh, gosh, thanks for being here. You were talking about your illustrations. We're going to put that in the show notes. So if anybody's interested in having a home illustration, that's great. We're here to talk to you today about your spooky story. So I'm wondering, did those illustrations ever have like a little hidden ghost in them or anything like that? Do you ever like hide things in the illustrations?
I wish I could. Most of my work is custom portraits for people. So a lot of times that you're selling a house or you're buying a house or you've done a lot of renovations on a home, people want a memento or a keepsake. And not many people ask for ghosts. They'll ask for occasionally like a dog or a cat in the window or something like that. But I wish I could hide a ghost in one or two of them, but I haven't found a client that would be willing to do that quite yet.
That's amazing. You know, me, if I was a client, I would be like, can you remove this junk that I have sitting on the porch because it's going to be there? And that's exactly what my request would be.
I've had requests for snow and like moving patio furniture, and these flowers are supposed to be yellow and they bloom, and this year they're pink. And I do all kinds of like move things around quite a bit. So yeah, I'm accustomed to that too.
That's great. Well, Rebekah, spooky stories. I guess we should get back on our October topic. Why don't you let us know? I don't know. Give us the rundown. Start at the beginning.
Okay. My husband, Steve, and I, we live in Tampa, Florida, and we live in a beautiful old historic district called Old Seminole Heights. And it's a very, very old, beautiful neighborhood full of craftsman-style bungalows. Our little bungalow is a darling one. It's built in 1922, and it is in mint condition, if I can say. It's got all of its original wavy glass windows and coffered ceilings, and it's got this amazing mint green bathroom tile, which is totally what sold me on the place. And the first time that we saw it at the open house, this was right in the heart of like COVID time. So we bought it in 2020. And the first time we saw it at the open house, my husband, Steve, turned to me right as we walked in the door. And he's like, this is the house. Like, we're making an offer on this place today. And when we went out by the time we got to the backyard, I looked up and I noticed the gable attic window. And I paused there because for some reason, I felt as though I imagined a little girl up there in the window staring back at me. Now, I couldn't physically see her, but this feeling was like really, really strong. And so I kind of ignored it. And so once we moved in, that feeling of someone watching me continued, and it became absolutely constant. I kept looking up at the window, and I kept feeling this like deep, heavy feeling in my chest that almost stopped me in my tracks. And I thought I was going crazy. And I had the same reaction, only it was much worse in the living room. This is going to sound nuts, but I felt like there was like an old grouchy lady in the room, just with her arms crossed, standing right behind me. And I felt it so strong. And it became like it was like in every single room of the house. And I would always feel like someone was right behind me. And sometimes I would jump, like thinking like, oh, my husband's behind me, then look and turn and no one was there. Now, like my husband and I started feeling these things, and he and I were both completely questioning our sanity. And it started like causing like a lot of stress in the house. And I had previous ghost experiences as a child, but nothing really like this. This kind of felt different and subtle. And it just felt like, am I making this up? Is this real? Is this a thing? So a very, very dear friend of mine, Deborah, she had previous ghost experiences, and she used to live in this same neighborhood. And I asked her, I was like, why don't you come over to our house? And she came over, and she's very, very sensitive. She's an empath. And the minute she walked in the house, she said, oh, you've got people here. Like, meaning like, you've got ghosts in the house. And she told me right off the bat, she's like, you've got a little girl in the attic, you've got a grouchy old lady in the living room, and you have an old man in the guest bedroom.
Wow.
And
wow.
Like, it validated everything that I had been feeling and questioning within myself. And so I felt like, okay, maybe I'm not going crazy. But it's funny because after that happened, that's kind of when this like onslaught of activity in the house really began. For many nights, we would wake up. It's always in the middle of the night too. It's always at midnight. It's always at 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the rules are with that.
It's 3 a.m.
Don't know why. It's like the witching hour is 12, like midnight, and then the devil's hour is 3. And I don't remember what those rules are, but it literally is always at 3 a.m. on the dot. And so we would wake up every night and we would hear classical music playing from the guest bedroom. Like our neighbors are asleep. There's no lights on. We're not playing classical music. We don't have a record player in the guest bedroom. We don't have, like there's only so much like ticking away at the logic that happens before you just kind of have to go, okay, there's somebody wants to play classical music in the guest bedroom.
But no, just to clarify, no device that it could be playing from.
No.
I think that's a new one for us.
I think you're right.
We've heard music coming on to like a speaker or a TV, but when it's just, well.
I mean, it was lovely. It was
Rebekah,
really pretty.
it
was like, okay, well, this, at least it's not like, like Bon Jovi or something at 3 a.m. It could be like, pretty disruptive. I mean, it was classical. It was lovely. It was like, all right.
I don't know. I mean, I like Bon Jovi.
I mean, listen, I do too. I'm a child of the 80s, but at 3 a.m. when you're asleep with your, with your husband and your cats, it's a little strange.
Who says you can't go home is a little on the nose for a ghost.
Beautiful callback. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I love that.
Deep cut. Okay.
That's why you're here, Daniel.
I know. This is good. I would wake up and I would hear knocking on my window right at the back of where I would sleep. I know that that's a thing. Like they want to, come in, or they are like asking. At Christmas time, that first year, our doorknob had a string of like little jingle bells on it. And those would go ding, 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 right in the middle of the night. Like someone was kind of flicking them and pecking them at with their fingers. When it started to get really, really strange is when we started to see things. One night, my poor husband was lying awake in bed, scrolling on his phone. I was asleep, and he noticed something odd above the doorway to our bedroom. When he looked up, he saw a black cat on top of the door jamb, and the cat looked at him with bright green eyes and then proceeded to walk through the wall.
Oh, wow.
And disappear. So
I'm nervous.
I know.
Okay.
Sorry. We don't own a black cat. So we do have 2 alive Siamese cats that sleep with us, but neither of them can jump up. What is that? 7 feet to the top of a door jamb? So no. So since then we see cats, quote unquote, physically from time to time. We have the 2 that we know are 2 Siamese cats, but we were seeing like black cats and a silver tabby cat. And we'd see it like out of the corner of our eye. And I was like, oh, it's our cats, Frankie and Lisa, like they want to go be fed. And I would go like kind of follow them to a different room. And then they weren't there. They were like sleeping in a completely separate room.
So did your cats sense the cats?
So Frankie did not. Frankie could sleep through a hurricane. He just did. He just slept through the 2 that passed over our house, completely slept through it. Our other little female kitty, Lisa, she's sensitive. Sometimes she'll look around, or she will like guard the hallway and just like kind of stare down the hallway. And I know that something's off when she does that because she always sleeps with me, like right across my neck and my chest. So I know that something's off in the house if she's kind of seems a little bit more like on guard. So yeah, a few nights I have felt cats like walking up like on top of me and like doing the little pity paws and making the bread biscuits, and then only to open my eyes and like there's no cats there, like nobody was there. So ghost cats are a thing. Evidently, ghost cats are a thing, and that's still pretty constant. I mean, it's been 4 years since we moved in, and I mean that's the one consistent one that we have. We always have some kind of ghost kitty hanging about here. Which is,
that's wild.
I mean, it's cute. It's fun. It's nothing terribly invasive. One other story that I have is that we have, I don't know what they're called. I guess it's an attached steam valve that's connected to the floor in our bungalow. And I guess there used to be a radiator here, but there's like an old steam valve that's still like stuck in the floor. And of course, it's like old.
Like a check valve.
Yeah, maybe it's that. And of course, again, at 3 a.m., I heard it go like release like a loud amount of steam, like a sound, like right at 3 a.m. And of course, I heard it and I was already awake, and my cats both turned their heads. And I was like, that's not like nobody else's home. It's just me and it's just the cats. So that was a little bit uncomfortable. One evening, I felt someone walking behind me in the hallway. And I turned to see who it was. And there was nobody there, but I definitely felt like someone was there. And I made the mistake of egging that ghost on. And I was like, oh, go ahead and do your worst. Like, go ahead. You try and scare me.
Oh, no. You're supposed to say stop.
I know. I know.
What happened?
Oh, my God. The door to the guest bathroom, like, opened and shut. Like, someone, like, opened it and, like, slammed it shut.
Oh, no.
As if to say, like, I'll show you. Like, that kind of a reaction. And then since then, I stopped doing that. I stopped. And
You stopped
I was like, I'm just going to leave. Yeah, no, we're going to leave those guys alone.
Antagonizing the ghosts, yes. All right. So you had a lot of experiences. These are sort of this story, your ghost, so far of the stories we heard, seems to be the most dexterous with whatever it's doing and whichever ghost it is. And then you've got cats and all that stuff. So you have all these ghosts living there. Do you want them? Have you thought about ways that you would send them on their way? I mean, where are you in this? You've been there for 4 years, almost 5 years, I guess, and you get no peace and quiet.
I mean, I have worked with a few friends of mine who are sensitive. I have a friend, Francesca, and her daughter, Skylar. They came over. She's very, very into like energy healing. And she has tried to clear the house before, like using holy water and going from room to room. And we've saged, we've salted, we've done the things left, right, up, back, in between. I've worked with another medium who worked remotely to try and clear the house. And he was able to. And we get peace and quiet for, I would say, like maybe about a month or so. But then it just like activity starts up again. And it's not one ghost. It's like many. It's like we're a hotel off of an exit to the highway. And like, it's the first like motel that you see that you'll just drive in because you're exhausted. That's what this feels like. Like the ghosts are like, oh, great, cool. I'm done on my highway. Let's just crash here for the night. For a very long time, it was really stressful and really, really tiring. And now I'm kind of to the point where I'm like, it's fine. Sometimes I will just have to say out loud, like, hey guys, I really need to sleep tonight and I need peace and quiet. Don't come in the bedroom. Or if it gets bad, I will walk around the house and clap my hands really loudly and say, like it's time to move on with your journey. Can't stay here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for visiting. Time to go out. Like I will have to clear the house on my own.
We have a 2-night maximum.
Exactly. And
maybe a long weekend if it's a holiday.
Totally. And you have to be like nice and respectful because otherwise they are going to do things, the things will go bump in the night, but it's kind of like management at this point. And I'm kind of like, maybe I've surrendered to it in a way and I'm just okay with it. As long as I can sleep and as long as you don't freak out my house guests, which has happened in the past, and leave my cats alone. Otherwise, we're all going to be fine.
That's real.
Just like, wow.
It's a lot.
And you said at the beginning of this, your husband was experiencing the same things. Has that remained pretty much true?
It has, and he was not a believer. In fact, he was like kind of anti. He was like, no, like this isn't happening. It's not ghosts. It has to be explained. It has to be explainable. That this has to have some kind of logic behind it. And I was like, maybe you need to let that go because we can't explain this away. And he was like, I think you're right. So sometimes we'll just have meetings in the morning, usually about like once a month. We'll be like, so did you hear that last night? And oh yeah, I did. And it might be this or it might be that, or it was probably just a ghost. And we're both pretty resigned to it, honestly.
Right.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well.
Okay. Also, so we got a little bit of background before we recorded that you are recording from your like studio space that is a separate structure in your backyard, kind of casita style. First of all, do we know if that was built like contemporaneously with the house? And also, does weird stuff happen in the casita too?
Okay, so no, it doesn't. So I think this was built separately because the back is like concrete slab wall, and then the other remaining exterior is wood. I think, and it's probably in my property records, I feel like it was like built like maybe in the 80s or the 90s, or maybe it was at one time a one-car garage, a tiny one-car garage. But this is my studio, and like this is my little, like where I do my work, and this is my little church, my little sanctuary. So in a way, like I've made sure that nobody is out here, no ghosts or no funny business is out here. Like it does have a different vibe to it too. It feels like safe and protected in a way. I'm not sure if that's from me or if that's just maybe the space or the way that this is. I'm not sure. But no, to answer your question, I don't have any funny friends out here.
Interesting.
Wow. Well, Rebekah, this has been great. I'm glad that you're there and I'm here. And
Happy Halloween, guys.
Yes. That is a terrible thing to say. Yeah, that is a terrible, terrible way for me to end this chat with you about your ghost story. But no, I think it's great. You're really good at telling the story and at having a good attitude about having it live or having them or being the motel on the highway for ghosts.
If they're polite, I'm polite. We'll just keep it that way. If as long as we can keep a good balance, everybody's happy. So
have you been able to like research the history at all and tie these figures to people?
No. So yeah, I have the history of the house. I've done history. I've worked for we do a home tour every year here in Old Seminole Heights. And so I volunteer and I do like the history on each of the houses and everything because I love going to the library and researching at that. And luckily I got all of that research. This house was only owned by maybe 2 or 3 families before us. And no, none of the people, quote unquote, the ghosts have belonged or lived in this home. As far as I know. No, they're all like super, super random. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just a weird rest stop on the way.
Exactly. Shay Lazaridis.
Well, thank you again, Rebekah. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebekah. Okay. I feel ways about that. How do you feel?
Well, I will say that is one of the creepiest stories, yet presented in a very no-nonsense, nonchalant way.
Yeah. I mean, I like Rebekah's attitude of just like, it's what it is. But
right.
I'm sorry, I take issue with classical music just existing. If there's a speaker, at least we can be like, oh, Alexa does weird stuff sometimes or whatever. But to just be in the air.
Yeah. I do not get it. But anyway,
loved it.
It's a
Love
good
everything about it.
All right, we've got another story coming up.
This next story takes place in a small house in Appalachia where some unexpected events began happening to Jake during the pandemic.
My name is Jake Carlock, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and currently I'm an architecture student at Georgia Tech.
Welcome, Jake.
Hello, Jake.
Hi.
Thanks for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me.
You are kicking off spooky season with some unexplained occurrences. So why don't you start by setting the stage for us? Tell us what kind of house you were in when you experienced what you did.
Okay. So the house was built from salvaged buildings in Appalachia. So there was a guy in like the 70s or so who collected old buildings that were being torn down from the various like the 1800s. I know there's like a stonework there that's from like one of the first settlers in the area. You can still see like the carvings and stuff from like the keystone of the fireplace. So super cool structure. And it's built in like a Dutch colonial style. So I guess it's like a Dutch colonial cabin. And it's cladded with cedar shake and cedar shingles. Yeah, so all hand done, all
already scary.
Yeah.
We got Amityville Horror House. We got
Appalachia.
Oh my
God. In the woods. So
we're in for something.
In the woods. So I have one question about the house. When was it built with all these salvage materials?
So it was physically constructed in, I believe, the 70s. I want to say is when everything was put together.
Oh, really?
Very
Yeah.
cool. All right. I have
Do
some
we have
thoughts
an
about
Indian
that.
burial ground involved as well? Or?
Probably, like
Okay,
the
good.
whole conglomerate.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. So what happened?
So I was living there during the pandemic. I was virtually teaching and like doing some renovations and everything because the place hadn't been touched in years. So it just needed some like light cosmetic upgrades. Like there was carpet that had been there since like the 70s. And like when I pulled it up, like you could literally sweep the carpet pad out. That's how deteriorated it was. But it had all this beautiful woodwork on the interior. All the scalloping and everything was like done by hand. So I was trying to renovate it, I guess, but like still be true to the history and not just wash out everything. So I had first started by just kind of going through everything, making a pile of a pile of a pile of a pile. And it had created this like little trail, I guess, that went through the living room, kitchen area. And you literally could just like scoot through it because it was literally just like, okay, this stuff needs to go here. This stuff needs to go here. This stuff needs to go here. During this time, like there would be little things like you may hear something in the distance, or like you may put something down and then come back and it's like slightly moved or something, like little things. But I guess like the biggest moment I had is I had been working on the porch late at night and came in, and I was FaceTiming one of my friends, came in through the front door. There's two doors. So there's like a front door and a back door, but it's one room. So yeah, you can like go diagonally across it. So I'm FaceTiming my friend, open the door, come inside. There's one light switch for downstairs, one light switch for upstairs. So like turn the light on, go to the back to like lock the back door. And I'd grab my phone charger, and it was one of those long iPhone chargers. It's like 10 feet long, something like that. And I had balled it up like around my hand and placed it in the middle of the kitchen table. And the kitchen table was like a volcano of stuff, like literally like all the sides and had been like raised up from just placing things there. And I placed it in the center. So yeah, after that, I was like chit-chatting, talking with them, walked back to the light switch, turned it off, walked upstairs. I think I'd like grab my laptop to like watch TV or something like that. And so when I got to the top of the stairs, I was like, oh, I need my phone charger. Like I totally forgot it. So turned around, walked back downstairs, and walked over to the light switch to turn the light on. And I was expecting to see my phone charger in the middle of the kitchen table. Instead, it was stretched out in a straight line on the floor in the pathway where I would walk.
Oh.
Yes.
So moved. Oh my gosh. So what did you
Yes.
think? What did you think at that time?
I was a little frightened, but I always viewed it as whatever is there, like, hey, I'm here. Like, it's always like a comforting presence. I've never been like, oh my gosh, like terrified or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like, hey, I'm here. And I've always looked at it as like, hey, I'm here and I love what you've done with the place. Like, it looks fabulous. So
Now, sorry, I may have missed this detail. Did you buy this place like at the beginning of COVID? Like, how did you live?
it was my grandparents. It was my grandparents. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
Cool. I see. But you're not currently living there.
No, I just go up on like weekends and stuff like that now.
Okay. How long were you there? I guess basically by yourself because COVID, right?
Yeah, like a year, I would say a year. I mean, I gotta have people like in the area. It wasn't just like in the mountains by myself.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, this is an interesting story to me, mainly because the house itself was constructed in the 70s. And if we go by historic standards, then yes, it pains me to say that anything from the 70s is historic now. But it was made from materials that are much older. And I don't know that we've ever had a story where maybe the unexplained things could have been attached to the materials versus the house. Does that make any sense the way I'm explaining it? Yeah. When I went to a house museum in Florida, I think this comes up every single year we do these ghost story episodes. They would report lots of activity, and the house itself was filled with artifacts and belongings of people. And they were convinced that the unexplained activities were attached to the items. And that was the only other time that I had ever heard that. This is interesting to me. So what do you think? Did you go into it kind of being skeptical, or have you gone into this being open to the idea?
I went in being open to the idea.
Okay.
Especially like with like the reoccurrences and like little things that happen, like just like like I said, just letting me know, like, hey, I'm here and I love what you've done with the place. So,
Do you remember what those other things were? Big or small?
like noises, kind of. We were all sitting on the front porch one time, and there was just like, so I had these string lights outside, and we were just sitting there chit chatting, and my friend looked over at me, and I looked back at her, and like we had saw this like black kind of circle thing, just like whoosh, like on the roof.
Ooh,
So, like on the roof of the ceiling and go out. So,
Cool.
yeah.
very interesting. Very interesting. So if you gave it some thought, is there anything that you could pinpoint as having an attachment to an unexplained something? Like, could you say, oh, it's probably the stones, or it's maybe the woodwork, or it's a picture that I have, or anything like that?
I really don't know. It's just the energy, I guess, that the place creates is it's just like a warm and welcoming. It's just such like a different experience I've never really felt anywhere else. So
Yeah, that's neat.
yeah.
So now that you've done the work, I'm assuming you said it was fully restored, I believe,
Yes.
in the note that you sent to me. And I'm sure that your furniture's where you want it to be and everything's kind of just how you like it when you come in to visit. When you walk in the door, do you feel anything other than, like you said, you feel like you're welcome and they're happy with you? But do you ever feel like any shift or change or anything like that when you walk in the door?
It was funny the last time I was there. I walked in and it was kind of like late in the afternoon. I have like this old clock that you have to manually wind. It's from the 1800s, I'd say. And it's like a day clock, very loud chime, and it only lasts for literally like a day. And I had not been up there for a month. And I walked in and like opened the door. There's a little bell on the door that like rings whenever you come in, like an old shop. And I was like, oh, it's so good to be home. And literally as soon as I said home, like the clock chimed. And that was pretty cool.
Jake, bury the lead. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
spooky.
that is really neat. Well, Jake, this is a really cool story. You've set the stage for us so well in Appalachia in this house. And every time we do these, Daniel, it makes me want to travel.
I don't know. I think I could skip the haunted house in Appalachia, to be honest. I
The setting is
have enough
beautiful.
problems with my iPhone cords to begin with.
Right.
I think all my cords are haunted.
I volunteer to be the ambassador to Appalachia. All right. Well, Jake, thank you so much. Daniel and I love October, spooky
I just
season.
love it. I just love it.
And I went into this podcast and spooky season the first year that we told stories, not really being a believer at all. Like I did these episodes for the listeners. You know what I mean?
Right.
They were like, we want to hear haunted stories. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then as soon as I started hearing their stories and I realized all the things that were happening in my house, I was like, oh, maybe that's what that is. So now I'm at least open to not having an explanation for everything that happens. And I love hearing stories like yours. So thanks again. And I appreciate you being here.
Of course. Thank you for
Jake.
having me. Yeah, thank you.
Well, that was a story, huh?
I mean, the setting alone, like I'm
Right.
there, I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
But I do
oh.
have a question for you. What do you think about the idea that spirits can attach to items versus the whole house?
Oh, well, I mean, my last laptop was probably haunted, I would say. so.
Okay. So you're on board?
I'm on it. Yeah. I mean, who am I to say no?
No. All right. Our next guest is Laura. She shares her eerie childhood experiences growing up in rural Montana.
Hi, my name is Laura Turner, and I currently live in Atlanta, but I grew up in rural Montana.
Welcome, Laura.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So nice to have you here. We are going to be talking to you about your spooky stories from Montana. But before we do, I think you had a little story you wanted to relay to Daniel this morning.
Me personally. Okay.
Yeah, I have been following you for years and years and years. My mom is the one who introduced me to your blog, and I think she sent you a message about 8 to 10 years ago that was like, I really like your blog, but you need to post more.
That-
And so
Fair.
No, I just wanted
Still
to
true.
apologize on her behalf because it's a very my mom type thing to say, but also, I know you don't have unlimited time to churn out blog posts every day.
It's also a very my mom thing to say. So
Yeah.
don't worry. I didn't remember it and all is forgiven.
Well, your response back to her was so nice, but I was a little
good.
embarrassed.
Please don't be, especially now because you've come to redeem yourself in a way I didn't realize you had to. But you have spooky in your past.
I do. I really do have spooky.
All right. So, Laura, now that you've made amends for your mother.
What's your mom's name?
Kelly.
Kelly.
Gustafson.
Kelly, you're so fine. And I love you.
She's going to be so
like
mad
you're
at me,
my
but
very
it's okay.
own. Okay.
If you go back into his diary, though, 8 to 10 years ago, he'll be like, I can't believe Kelly said that.
Yeah,
What was she
these
thinking?
Expectations.
My whole diary is online, Stacy. We just covered this.
Yeah.
All right. So, Laura, Montana. Start there, I guess. Tell us about the house you were in Montana and how you ended up being there and then what happened.
Yeah. Well, again, I grew up in rural Montana, probably about 30 miles south of the Canadian border. And I would guess about 2,500 residents. And that's where my parents grew up. And it was just like this typical 1950s ranch. You would never guess anything from the outside. And we lived there from the time I was born until I was, I think, in 8th grade. But I had all these weird experiences, and most of it was concentrated in this middle bedroom. I think the first ones I remember was when my older sister, she's older by 8 years, she and I shared the room, and I can see everything still in my mind. But I would wake up in the middle of the night, there would be the shape of a person like in behind the curtains, like someone was standing between the window and the curtains. And I would just kind of look at it, and then I would go back to sleep because I always felt safe when she was there with me.
Can I interject? Question?
Of course.
Okay, you've gendered the ghost, so
well, no, the ghost was different. I don't know.
Oh, the ghost was different.
This ghost was different.
Okay.
I guess that's a little awkward.
So let me just go back. So you were in bed and you could see this undefined person, potential ghost behind a curtain. Is that what I'm understanding? Okay.
Yeah. It's like I would just on a random night, I would just wake up and see this shape and kind of acknowledge that it was there, and I'd go back to sleep.
Oh, interesting. So you weren't nervous or
kids.
scared. I know kids are great.
You're just like, all right.
I was like, Avery will save me. I don't really need to be worried. We'll sacrifice her first.
Yes.
Yeah.
How often did that happen, do you think, if you had to just quantify it?
I honestly don't even know. I just distinctly can picture what it looked like.
Right. Okay.
So I don't know if it happened 10 times or 1 or 2. But then she moved out into another room, and I was in there by myself, and I had like a twin bed. And the second experience I had was I was sleeping and I woke up, and there was another shape of a person standing next to this chair that was like sitting right across from my bed. And I immediately jumped out, ran to my sister's room, climbed into bed with her, and stayed with her the rest of the night. And the next morning, I went back to my room and was like determined to figure out what this was. Like, there has to be an explanation. And there wasn't like any blankets or anything. It was just the chair. And I was meticulous about picking stuff up when I was little, but it was only to avoid situations like this. Like, I'm kind of a messy person, but I just was so scared that I would wake up and see something and be afraid. So my whole childhood, I was like, yeah, picking up before I went to bed. And kind of in that same vein, I just did not have a good feeling in this house. It was like an overall unease. And so if my parents left me alone, which, growing up in first grade, they would leave me alone probably, if they were running errands, and it was such a small town. I remember always wanting to be within eyesight of the front door or a door.
Mm-hmm. So you can get out. You got to get out as fast as possible.
Exactly. Yeah. And if the weather was nice, then I'd just go sit on the front lawn and wait for them to come home, because I just did not like being in there by myself. And then I guess this is the third incident that happened. I was sleeping in the bed again. Same situation where I woke up and there was just this big translucent ball, like glowing ball that was coming through the window. It looked like a big glowy moon. Again, I like jumped out of bed, ran to my sister's room, crawled in with her, and I'd never heard of orbs before. I didn't know what that was, but it wasn't until later that I realized their kind of significance.
Mm-hmm. It's a thing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what did this orb do? It came through the window and then did it?
Oh, I was out of there.
Oh, okay.
I was gone. I could not. I didn't stick around.
I want to read a short excerpt, just a couple sentences from the note that you sent me, because I thought it was so cute. And I think a lot of people can identify it as a child. I remember having an uncomfortable feeling there. And if I was home alone, I'd sit out in the front yard or try to stay within sight of the front door if I had to be. That was what you just told us. And then you said, I would crawl into my sister's bed nightly until she went to college when I was in the 4th grade.
Oh, yeah.
And then I slept with my parents until 6th. As I said, That house gave me the creeps. And my heart just went out to you because I was that kid. If my parents had let me sleep with them, I certainly would have done that. But my kids slept with me too. And I totally get it. I can just picture everything you went through from a child's perspective and then from a mom's perspective too. That's so cute.
Yeah. And I have an older brother as well. He's 4 years older. And I tried to crawl into bed with him, but he wasn't having it. He was not okay with that. So,
yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Do you feel like since you lived in that house, have you had other experiences? Or when you moved from that house, did you feel a sense of relief?
Well, do you want me to tell the fourth event?
There was 4.
Always.
Yeah, let's
there
do
was
that.
another event.
Oh, yeah, please do.
I moved all the way down the hall to the end of the hall, away from my parents' room. And this was probably shortly before we moved out. And I remember I turned off the light. I was laying down, ready to fall asleep. And I started hearing this really deep breathing.
Nope.
Like this. Yeah.
No.
Like, And I sat and went through a list in my head. Could it be the dog? Did the dog come in and sleep in my room? Could it be my brother, like really trying to mess with me? I went through a list of trying to identify what the sound could be. And finally, I just switched on my reading light and it stopped. And when I went back and switched it off again, it never came back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would sleep with my parents too. So, okay, but this is in a different bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
So, Laura, I hate to tell you, but it's following you.
Well, it could be a different ghost.
I know,
I
that's
guess
true.
it could be.
Okay, so did your parents ever cop to like feeling anything or experiencing anything? Or was this really kind of you and your sister?
Well, we never really talked about it. I think my parents just kind of felt like I had a big imagination. And that I was a scaredy cat, that I was just afraid of everything. Because when I was about 2, I came out of my room, they put an Afghan over my face and let me sleep on the couch while they watched birds.
Oh.
And I remember the nightmare I had after watching that movie.
Are you from the 90s too?
They're just like, here's your Afghan. Big 2-inch holes. Yeah.
But don't watch. Yeah. Don't pay attention.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really funny.
But we never really discussed it. And then later on, I started telling them, actually this summer, I was telling them my story and my brother. And my parents never had weird feelings. My brother never had weird feelings. But I found out that my sister hated that house.
Oh, okay.
She didn't like it either. And once we moved, my mom doesn't remember telling me this, but I do. And it was significant to me because she came to me and was like, you just sleep so much more deeply now that we're in this new house. Yeah. And I've never had that I could actually say, I've never had other experience since leaving that house.
Were you ever able to like learn the history of before you guys were there? Like with the age of the house, it feels very possible that you guys were like the second owners. So maybe that original owner, I don't know,
died in there.
I love theories.
Mm-hmm. But it is out west. So we had lots of open land. So there could be lots of activity there prior to development.
Lots of genocide.
Yes, all of
well,
that.
Okay, so the town I grew up in is called Cupbank, and it was named that by Lewis and Clark. And it's on the former Blackfeet lands, native lands. There's a river, a creek that separates it from the reservation. So there's definitely strife there. The town is so small that it's one of those where everybody knows everybody. They know their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, and can list them at the drop of a hat. So I feel like if there had been some nefarious history, they probably would have, my parents would have known about it.
So after this house, like nothing, or have you had stuff?
There was a house I lived in college that it's not really distinct, but there were a couple times where there were noises outside the window that made me feel really uncomfortable. But nothing that I could really say. I didn't see anything. I didn't experience it the way I did this house.
Right.
Okay. I'm just trying to confirm a demon has not attached itself to you. And
right.
We're good.
I appreciate that. And I
welcome.
can say our current house has the best energy of any house I've been in. So I don't know why I can even say that, but there's just sometimes a feeling in a house. I do remember when we were house hunting, we walked into a house and even my husband, who does not associate with any of this at all, he was like, this house is not good.
Yeah.
I felt like weird energy, but not had anything I could point a finger at.
Before I even was open to the idea that there might be energy or spirits or something like that, my husband, we were looking for a house and he sent me a real estate listing. And I just had this visceral feeling. I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not even setting foot in that house. And I couldn't even tell you what that house looked like right now. Like, I don't remember anything about it. I just remember when he showed it to me, it wasn't just like, oh, it looks run down and I don't want to fix it. It was just like a overall feeling in my body that I was like, no way. Don't even want to go see it. It was weird.
Wild.
Yeah.
You saw vinyl windows. That's all that happened, Stacy. Stop being so dramatic.
Judge it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I honestly don't remember what kind of windows it had. So yeah.
Uh-oh.
Drama. That's me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Laura, thank you so much for sharing your story today. And
loved it. Loved every second.
Thank you.
Danielle and I are both relieved that nothing's following you around permanently. So good
me
news.
Too. I don't need that stress on top of everything else. So
who does?
Thanks again, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
All right. After listening to that, it is a relief that there is no demon that is attached to Laura full time. I don't think we've ever told a story where that was the case. Do you believe that happened?
Yeah. And I mean, who am I? I don't believe I've ever had a demon attached to me, but like some of my exes might beg to differ. So could be.
Maybe we should just leave it at that.
Yeah. Let's live in the mystery.
We've got 2 more stories coming your way.
Our next story comes from Sara. She shares her unique experiences growing up in a haunted shotgun house in Thomasville, Georgia.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sara. I am currently living in Greenville, South Carolina, but I am from Thomasville, Georgia at the very bottom, and that is where I lived in a haunted house as a child.
Ooh, welcome, Sara.
Love it.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, haunted house in Georgia. What type of house was this?
It was a 1910 shotgun house originally that was right outside of the downtown of my hometown. It's a very small town, really thriving and bustling downtown development, a very, 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 very big historical district. So it was part of the historical district. And we moved down. The story my parents told me was my biological dad was 6'7", and the house had 12-foot ceilings. So he was excited to never hit his head again, ever, between the 2 houses they were deciding on. And so we rolled up into this house, and it had been renovated over the years, like stuff gets done. But the original floor plan, you walk in the front door, big, massive hallway, all the rooms are off to the side. And eventually, when the house was renovated more for modern conveniences, the rooms were still off the side of the main hall, but the back porch area and then part of the hallway had been converted to bathrooms. So when you walked into the house, effectively you're in the hallway. It's a long straight shot. And then you have the 2 bathrooms. And then behind that is where the rest of the L-shaped back porch was. And on part of the L is where they installed laundry and like the back door entrance to the house at that point.
Okay.
That was a very efficient and accurate explanation. I feel like I could draw this floor plan now. Okay, thank you.
Yes, exactly.
I try.
And for context, if I'm understanding correctly too, the shotgun houses used to be, I mean, the actual hall was open from front to back.
Correct,
So
yeah.
that the air moved through there, and I guess it was cooler in the South in the hot weather.
It did. Typically in South Georgia specifically, there would have been, if it wasn't a full wraparound porch, a front and a back, and the hallway connected both so you could have breezeway and maintain your airflow and use the side windows they opened. They were, 9-foot windows because the ceilings were so full. So you could open those most of the way too and draft your air that way.
Wow.
It was pretty cool.
How old were you when you moved into this house?
I was 11.
Okay.
And we
prime
lived there
creepy
for
time.
3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Cool. Perfect.
Daniel always considers that prime creepy time. And
They
he's
love
right.
that age.
It is. Yeah. There's something
hadn't
like
thought
weird
about
about 13 and the couple years on
Mhm.
either side of it for every kid, even mine now. I mean, just something happens.
It's
Good,
true.
bad,
I feel
whatever.
like the whatever we're calling it ghosts, very active when they're get to about 4 years old, and then they take a
Mhm.
break, and then around 11, 12 for a few more years.
Yeah.
Your kids are going to be real spooky. This is all I know
Mhm.
about child rearing.
No, that's about
Okay.
me too until I got stepkids. So please don't feel bad.
Okay, good. And they seem great.
Yeah, it's in the book what to expect when you're expecting, or what to expect the first 12 years. There's always a ghost section in there. So yeah.
Relentless haunting. Okay,
Yeah.
so you move in, you're 11 years old, you're so cute, and then what happens?
Things just kind of proceeded as normal, living in your house and all of that stuff. And my mom was the first person to talk about it, but it got to a point where we were all noticing it. And then eventually just all kind of came together. It was like, have you noticed this? I don't love it. What's going on here? Or, hey, Mom, why does this happen when I do this? And then we slowly kind of started paying attention and putting all the pieces together. And we're like, oh, this is very interesting and fun. And it was nice too, because this is a stretch, but in my mind, if you're going to subscribe to the belief that ghosts are there, you should take positive and negative sides to that, both sides of the coin, right? So there's going to be good entities and bad entities. And a lot of times you hear about the creepy stuff and like people hanging out at the foot of their beds and all the nightgowns and whatever. But our ghosts were 2 kids. So it was super chill, actually. And it was really, really fun and different.
Okay, so like, what are the sort of early things that tip you off? And then like, how does this manifest?
So we always had cats growing up, right? And you can't hear cats. They have perfect placement. They're almost silent. And like I said before, my biological dad was a massive dude, right? So when he was in the house, you knew like it shook when he stepped just because he was a big dude, And so we'd all be like in our rooms or whatever, or in other parts of the house, with those times when you can kind of account for everybody in the family, And then all of a sudden you'd start hearing things run up and down the hallway, back and forth, or like little light footsteps. It's like, no, the cats are outside. One's right here. I don't know. We don't have any dogs. It's not a dog problem. And so it kept building in those little incidents to where my brother would start noticing it and strange little things. You'd hear them run up and down the hallway and laugh occasionally. They would play with a ball too. You could hear the ball bounce down the hall.
Where you like, here's a bop it, try it out.
Right. It's like, I'm just glad y'all aren't fighting and messing with me. Dude, carry on, dudes. It was so interesting because they were just still in the house and nobody else was ever there. It was just the 2 kids. We don't know anything about them or, like what part of the ownership were they there or were they on the land before? None of that. They were just there.
So how did you know they were kids?
We never saw anything, but it was based on the type of activity that they were doing. So they would run. It was always 2 sets of things. You could always hear like 2 different distinct feet running almost, or people going back and forth. The ball was another one. Occasionally you could hear them laugh and each one would laugh differently. And it would be like that echoey sound you'd think of. And you would hear them play with each other, like almost playing tag. My mom said a lot the house was set up where the laundry was on the back porch. It was a screened in porch, not fully enclosed, right? So that would have been the primary back entrance for the house always, except now it's just a different setup because you're doing laundry there. But Mom said constantly when she would be doing laundry and nobody else was at home, she would feel things, like feel people run behind her. And then the screen door would start opening and closing or like flapping and bouncing, even if there was no wind around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you get goosebumps, Daniel?
Describe my face. I'm overjoyed.
It's the cutest.
His face looks happy and also terrified at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so we never saw anything. Were there times of day where activity seems stronger or like things that would trigger it in any way?
That is an excellent question. The one thing that I would always trigger that always annoyed me the most was if you were taking a bath. You'd be in the bathroom, you'd be trying to enjoy your bath. And in my mind, like they couldn't get outside because the doors were closed, but you're ghost, so that shouldn't matter. So whatever. But anyway, like you'd hear them run up to the door and stop right outside the door. And then the door handle would start jiggling the doorknob, like they were trying to come in the bathroom or like get through or something. And that happened so many times I stopped taking baths in that house, actually.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah. I saw one episode of The X-Files at 7 and I also stopped taking baths.
Yeah, The X-Files was always too scary for me back then.
So scary.
You also asked 2 other times of the day, and it was generally like mid-afternoon. Like, you know, if you think about back in the day, kids probably got out of school around noon back then because they'd have to go home and help with stuff. And so it was always like that noonish, early afternoon to kind of dinner time frame.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
That's great. Did you ever give them names or were they just the kids or whatever? Did you ever think of them as names or anything?
Not really. We're not a big like naming family of like things and items. So, names is a thing for me. Like, I believe that's part of your identity. And I think it's important to respect that and pronounce it correctly. I'm in HR for a living. Sorry. So I weird thoughts on things. You know, in my mind, I wouldn't want to say the wrong thing or call them the wrong thing. And then it was the person they hated the most in the world. And then they'd be pissed off. And then the ball would get started to throw at me instead of their sister. And so we just left that one alone.
Yeah. That makes
Amazing.
sense to me.
Okay, Stacy, we can workshop this off air, but I think next year we should try to track down the people who currently live in the houses that we're talking about this year.
Oh, that would be fun.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah, it would.
And maybe because there's so many like historian sleuths that love to do this stuff. So maybe they could also dig into, you know, the history of the house and see if we can tie these people together.
Can you imagine how mad somebody might be, though, if we like send them a little card and say, hey, we heard that this house had paranormal activity
that your house is spooky.
In 1990s. Right. And then they write back and they're like, don't ever contact me again. You know, like they have no idea. And now they're like totally freaked out. They have to sell the house. Yeah.
Or they like just had the house exercised.
Right.
Yes.
And they're like, we just dealt with this.
It's like getting your roof redone, getting the exorcism.
Yeah. How long do those last? Every 30 years, it's time to get an exorcism.
Right. That's how long they're good for. I just think the worst that can happen is they'll say no. And, you know, we ruined their lives, but our life is still fine. So
we're still going to be okay. Yeah. I have no worries.
And what a fun postcard to get in the mail, even if you don't want to talk to somebody. That's just a good story.
Right. Yeah,
Agreed.
For sure.
Agreed.
Okay, let's try that again. So since your experiences as a child, have you had any more experiences as an adult or you pretty much wrapped that up?
No, I'm very, very lucky. I also grew up in the Bible Belt, so that environment contributes a little bit, but we were very religious, very spiritual growing up the whole time. One of my first memories in life is seeing an angel when I was like 2 years old. So it's always been incorporated into our lives. And it's been really interesting I don't like the word clairvoyance. That just is a weird one. But what did my mom call me? My mom calls me an empath is the word that she likes to use. But I've seen it. I don't solicit like the people on TV, right? Like I'm not holding seances and going to do things. But I've spoken to my dead grandpa before a bunch and never met him. That was a really profound experience for me. That's one of my favorite experiences in my life. And So yeah, there's been a lot of really cool stuff. My house now is not haunted, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, a little peace and quiet finally, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But you did say your kid is the age.
Yeah, they're both really sensitive in different ways, and it's really cool to watch from this perspective. So it's been really fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sara, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
story today. And I don't know that
Thank you
we've
for
had a
having
story
me.
from a shotgun house before. So I also appreciate your wonderful explanation of the house, both old and as modified.
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here and speak to you guys.
Thank you so much, Sara.
This is off topic, but just in the general conversations we've had during these recordings, we often ask about people's jobs. And I thought Sara had a neat one. She works in a plant. We interviewed her while she was working in this plant, and they manufacture kayaks. They pour this plastic sand in a mold, and she described it so well. She said it spins around on a rotisserie, similar to chicken. And in only a few hours, they have a whole kayak. Who knew?
Poof.
It's a kayak.
Amazing. This is definitely like not the first time kayaks have come up on this podcast. We talked about it in relation to origami before.
You're right. You're
Mhm.
right. Huh.
Like a
Who
steel
knows?
trap. up
Yeah,
there.
good for you. I'm impressed. All right. Our final story is coming up next. Our last story today comes from Syracuse, New York, also known as Salt City. I just learned that. 18 years ago, Mary moved into her home as a single person. However, she quickly came to realize her apartment came with a roommate, and they've been cohabitating ever since.
Hi, my name is Mary. I am a cat lady living in Syracuse, New York, and I have a long time history of the paranormal and live in a house built, I think, in 1910 or 1920. So she's not a young one that I live in.
Hi, Mary.
Hello and
Hello.
welcome.
Hello.
Yay. So Syracuse, you're not too far from me, Mary. I'm outside of Buffalo.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Yeah, right. Well, it's so good to have you here. This is certainly Daniel's favorite time of year. I'm here to speak for him. So to hear spooky stories.
It's like a double whammy today because Mary's one of my like ride or die message people on Instagram. And so I'm both getting to meet you and hear like a terrifying story, which is kind of ideal.
It's not terrifying, I promise.
Oh, okay.
To me.
Spooky.
Not terrifying to me. Yeah.
Cool.
When we started these ghost stories, people would tell them to me because Daniel wasn't the co-host yet. And I was always looking for like lighthearted, happy stories. And now that Daniel's on, he's like, okay, it's not scary enough. It is not scary enough.
Self-perception, right?
Right. Exactly.
I was raised in the 90s. We just had unmitigated access to horrifying television.
Same, true. Yeah. Not much phases us.
Yeah. So tell us, where does this start? Where does the story start? Paint us a picture. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, it's not even a one story. I've lived in the same house for 18 years. I rent. It's a duplex. I live in the top half of a house. And literally within the first few days of me living here, I noticed some paranormal activity. And it has been pretty consistent since then. So I definitely have a ghost. It's a man. I have seen him. And we kind of cohabitate, I guess. So yeah, he's kind of my bro.
Does he have a name?
I've never named him because I don't know his name. I feel like it would be rude to call him something that's not his name. I mean, I'd be mad in the afterlife if some rando living person just gave me a name. So I try not to disrespect him like that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say maybe he'd work really hard to let you know his name somehow. But yeah, I get your point. And I agree with you for sure.
Yeah.
So you move in, you find out you already have a roommate.
Yeah.
How did you know? I mean, what was the first instance?
So for the first year or two that I lived here, he would do things, and I didn't attribute it to him yet. So things would happen in my apartment. There's a dimmer switch, for example, in my kitchen. It's one of those plates that if you hold your finger on it, it will dim up and then dim down. And the light in the kitchen would just go up and down on its own, up and down, up and down. Or I would wake up with all the cupboards open. A lot of the activity happens in the kitchen. He really likes the kitchen for some reason. Cupboards would be open. Things would be moved that I'm a super type A Capricorn. I know when my stuff has been moved. So things would be moved that I knew I didn't put there. And then fast forward, and I'm not even sure how long, I would start to wake up in the middle of the night and sense someone in the room with me. And after a few times of that happening, I could finally see him. So I never saw him, like how you think on TV, like you're seeing a ghost walk through the house. I could see his outline in the dark. He was stocky, kind of bigger built, and he would kind of stand at the end of my bed just looking at me. And I never got a sense of fear about him. I didn't like it, just as it is as a living person, but I never felt fearful of him. I never got that impression. It was almost like a curiosity from him. So I started telling my boyfriend at the time, who I had just moved out to Syracuse from an hour away, and we had met before I moved here. So he started staying with me, as soon as I moved here. We didn't live together. And I started telling him this, and he, of course, thought I was insane. Until one night at 3 a.m., which is my favorite part of this story, I woke up to him screaming because he saw the ghost laying in between us in bed with his hands folded behind his head, just like chilling. And because he didn't want to hear about the ghost previously, I never explained what he looked like by build. And he explained him to a T. And I was like, well, I didn't need confirmation, but now I have confirmation.
Oh, wow.
Holy smokes, Mary.
I guess I'm just a man magnet, even in the afterlife.
There you go, right? Living, dead, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. Wow. So the kitchen, why do you think the kitchen? Like, I don't know much about, you're certainly open to all of this paranormal activity. And so I don't know much about intentions. Like, after 18 years, have you thought about his intentions, or, the reasons why, or anything?
I would love to tell you that I've really thought about it deeply, but I come from a family where we are very open to such things. I have a very matriarchal family. My mom is one of 7 kids, and it's 6 girls and 1 boy. And we have a long Irish and Welsh lineage on that side. So there's a lot of women, myself included, in my family who have some psychic abilities to different extents. And so it's kind of something that I've grown up with. Not necessarily, not like we talk about it constantly, but I just am used to it, I guess, because we just kind of talk about it. And I remember when I told my aunt about it, who is a little bit more involved in metaphysics than some other people, she just said to me, well, since he's frightening your boyfriend, just say to him out loud, hey, I respect that you're here. I appreciate you being here, but you're really kind of freaking me out a little bit. So if you could stop showing up, that'd be fantastic. And he did for a long time, until that boyfriend and I broke up after about 2 years, and he immediately came back. Like, maybe he thought I needed a shoulder to cry on. I'm not sure. And started watching me sleep again until I did the same. I was like, okay, I'm tired of waking up at 3 a.m. every day.
Right.
So
I need my rest.
I haven't really seen him now in years, but he still moves things all the time. He still turns the lights off and on all the time. I feel his presence here. Yeah, so I guess I never really questioned it because I kind of grew up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Such a relaxed attitude.
Yeah, I mean,
like a pretty alarming, haunting situation.
Well, I know Daniel has a question for you, but I just have a follow-up to that, because the reason why I asked you that is because a lot of times we talk to people and their ghosts come out when they start, tearing things up, or, doing demo because they're doing some rehab or renovation or something like that. And since you're renting, I mean, I'm sure you've done things off and on over the 18 years, but generally speaking, your primary goal there is to just live there, and that's your home. And so that's why I wondered if you could sense anything about why he's still there, or if he has concerns, or if there's any. I mean, I guess the boyfriend thing, that does answer some of the question. He was kind of curious about that. And then when the boyfriend was no longer in the picture, he's like, okay, I'm back, Yeah. So
yeah.
I don't know. That's why I asked that question.
No, that totally makes sense. I've never seen a correlation. Daniel could probably tell you. For a renter, I take really good care of the house that I rent. I do a lot of...
She's the property manager as well.
So I take a lot of pride in this house. So maybe he likes the things that I do around here because I put work into it and make sure that it stays lovely and fresh looking. But I've not noticed a correlation with that, honestly. If anything, he just kind of shows up when I least expect it. Like I might not notice anything for months, and then all of a sudden my cupboard doors are banging. And I'm like, what? I don't understand why he's unhappy.
Can you talk to me more about the cupboard door thing? Just because it's like straight out of a horror film, like all the cupboard doors.
To be fair, he doesn't really bang them. He opens them. So he'll leave them open. And it's not like they're wide open. They're like a quarter of the way open or halfway open. And ones that I don't, ones that are super tall. I'm only 5'2", and my kitchen has a super high ceiling. So there's a few cupboards that I have to stand on a chair to get to. So I know they're not just swinging open of their own accord. They're kind of clicked in. So, and he just really what annoys me. Sorry, dude, if you're listening, is if he is, I know, if he moves little things like my keys are always in the same spot. It is routine. So if my keys are moved, I'm like, must you mess with me?
Right.
I've never been on time to anything in my life. Please stop making it worse.
Have you, aside from telling him, maybe lay off laying between me and my boyfriend, have you tried to like commune with him in any way? We're not seancing, I assume, but we're anything?
No, because I just feel like we cohabitate nicely. And I know that's probably not the fun answer. Other people would be like, I really want to dig into this. Why is he unsettled? And we are pretty chill together. Full disclosure, we do have a family psychic who most of us see. And he is a wonderful little older Italian man who charges next to nothing. And I visit him at least once a year. And I've asked him, is there anything I should or could do? And he has given me some things like how you put salt in all four corners of the room and then you sweep and put it outside, or saging and things like that. But I don't know. I feel like it was his house before it was my house. So like, why do I have the right to mess with him?
That's how I've always felt in my house. Like,
yeah,
my ghosts tend to stay pretty quiet, but every time something's happened and people suggest like sage, I'm like, I'm not trying to mess.
Yeah.
No, what if he flips?
Right? Like,
what if he flips and gets angry and like...
They've never been threatening, so let's let that sleeping dog lie.
Whatever's happening here, if it's happening here, I'm fine with it too. So I've never done anything. I've used my out loud voice to ask nicely for things to stop happening. But other than that, that's as close as I get because I figure it's all good.
Same. Yeah. I mean, he's benevolent right now. What if I do something to make him mad and he like starts breaking all my stuff? I'd be so sad,
For sure.
How am I going to watch Schitt's Creek on repeat if he breaks my TV? I'd rather not.
Right. So you've had neighbors downstairs, I'm sure, maybe the same one after 18 years, maybe several. Have any of them ever mentioned anything?
That's the weird thing is my best friends live downstairs from college. That's why I moved here. And they never noticed anything. And then another person moved in who she is now a very good friend of mine as well. She lives elsewhere now, but she never noticed anything either. So I don't know if he's drawn to me because of that more metaphysical background that I have in my family and the more psychic, for lack of a better term, abilities that I do have. I'm not sure.
Was the house built as a two-family?
I could not tell you that, to be honest. I don't know.
Well, my theory is maybe it was just his apartment. That's why he doesn't go downstairs.
It could have been. I mean,
maybe
Syracuse is an old city, and it's not from the early 1800s, which is when things were super booming with mansions and stuff. It was a little bit later, and that is still when the salt industry was going strong. But a lot of two-family houses were starting to be built versus just the bigger mansions for the people who were here, for the Erie Canal, because Syracuse is the salt city. So we were a main producer of salt in the country for a very long time because of our salt-based freshwater lakes. So there was a large community here that wasn't necessarily the same kind of money that were building the big old stately houses. So it could very well be that this was built as a two-family.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I love salt. So thank you for that.
I will send you some Syracuse.
Oh,
Nice.
you don't have to do that. But like, if you
there's
want,
a
I'll give you my address.
Stop, but yes, but no.
But like, I do really love salt. All salt.
All right, Daniel, do you have any follow-up questions?
I'll probably think of some later, but I guess not.
All right.
Do
Well,
you?
Mary, thank you so much for telling your story today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I love all these stories, and this one's a good one.
So good to meet you, Mary. Thank you.
So great to meet you too. What a great day.
Man, I love Mary. She helps me consistently with skincare, but also the laid back attitude about the situation she's been dealing with for
Right.
nearly 2 decades.
I feel like we should explain a little bit about the skincare. I guess you and Mary have this direct message, long-term relationship on Instagram where you are both very interested in skincare, not
She's
ghost
really
related.
helped me. I'm interested. She's educated. So
Well, your skin is glowing. You've never looked better.
thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Mary.
Well, it has been so fun today listening to these stories. Oh my gosh. And I'm really excited to share part 2 next week.
The best. I love this time of year. Many, many thank yous to our guests, Rebekah, Jake, Laura, Sara, and Mary.
And thank you to you for listening to True Tales from Old Houses. And don't forget to order that merch. Visit truetalesfromoldhouses.com/merch, and we will see you next week.